You're listening to In Sickness, a podcast about caregiving with Allison Breininger and Justin Bima.
Hi, Justin. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, it's been a good weekend so far.
Yeah.
Fall is going okay these days, it seems,
Okay.
in general. So yeah, it's feeling okay. I know that I've been feeling a little rough for a while, but it's not that, and I don't know that I'm like drastically suddenly feeling great, but it's just, I don't know, I'm feeling okay.
We'll take it.
And that feels pretty good right now.
Yeah.
Kind of the holidays are coming up, so kind of getting geared up for that. We got our Christmas tree up, which I know is early, but we like to just enjoy it for as long as we can.
Sure.
So we did that last weekend and kind of getting into the holiday spirit a little bit, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Well, I love that. I think I've said this before, but hold my breath just a little bit, because just when I say, how you doing? Mm-hmm. So I'm, and obviously you get to come here as you are, and I am here to support you in all the ways. Mm-hmm. And when you say, that you're doing all right, that makes me happy. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Glad to hear it. Yeah.
What about you? How have things been going over there?
Just wanted to welcome Winston to the show as he's barking. So Winston's also glad to hear that you're doing well. Thank you, Winston. Yeah. So since you and I have last talked officially on the podcast, Sean had his big surgery. So just to share with the listeners that surgery for his esophageal cancer went very well. Everything, the whole thing, everything went better than expected.
So great.
Which is wild. That's not the way things usually roll for us. And when this whole diagnosis had happened, there were so many unknowns that it was like, okay, this could range anywhere from PET scans clear, surgery goes well, pathology is great, all the way to the other end of this is a disaster in every way. Right. Right. And the worst was having no idea for a while where we were on that continuum. Yeah. But then as it moved along, first the PET scan was clear. And so that sort of moved, an inch this way. Yeah. And then the surgery went super well. They were able to remove the cancer in the preferred method, which is what they weren't sure they were going to be able to. So that was great. They were really ready for him to be in so much pain, and he wasn't. Wow. They put in a new G tube because they thought he wouldn't be able to eat, and he has been able to eat. Okay, great. So the recovery has been way better. So then again, move us an inch that way. Yeah. And then we had to wait a while for the pathology results, because if it was a certain type of the squamous cell cancer and a certain depth and a certain this and this and this, then there would have been a potential that there were still cells in there that could be spreading to the lymph nodes, even if we weren't seeing them yet show up on the PET scan. So then there could have been this conversation of, does he need more radiation? But he's actually not supposed to have more radiation because he's already had the radiation. Right. So does he need chemo? He's really not supposed to have chemo because of the FA. So we held our breath for that for a while, and then that came back and they said, nope, we're good. And he called it curative. Yeah. Which feels, that's not a word we usually use. Yeah, that's a big word for you to hear. Right. Yeah. And I fear saying that because I don't want people to be like, ta-da, he's cured. Yes, it doesn't, I know you know this, but it doesn't cure the underlying disease. But what he's saying is that bout of esophageal cancer has been cured. Right. Amen. Yeah. Great. Hallelujah. Yes. So I feel like an entirely different human. And I feel like as each of these bits of good news came up, I've sort of come back into the sunshine, I was a terrible hot mess there for a while. Yeah. Rightfully so. And now I just feel like a totally different person. I just feel amazing. Yeah. Because, there for a while we couldn't plan. We couldn't do anything because it was just I don't know. You might be getting radiation. I don't know. He might be never able to eat again. I don't know. He might rip a hole in his esophagus. I don't know. Yeah. So to be oh, this is how this ended up. Okay. Feels great. So I'm feeling just top of the world these days. Good. I'm really happy to hear that. Thank you. Thank you. And I made myself, from past experience, have learned, I took the whole week off, which I know I have the privilege to do because I'm my own boss, right? Took the whole week off. And even though things did go well, still kept the whole week off, right? And just rested and rested and rested, because even though the results were good, obviously there was a lot of hard moments along the way. Right.
Yeah.
So proud of myself for doing that as well. So yeah. But an interesting thing that happened was the night before surgery, I found myself cleaning my house.
Oh, okay.
Which is not something I, like do.
Right.
Much. And when I paused to be like, what am I doing right now? I realized that it was something that I could control in the moment, that the following day felt very out of my hands, obviously.
Right, yeah.
Like I just had to get them there, but otherwise like, totally out of my hands. But like changing the state of the house, that felt like something I could control. Like knowing that I would come home the next day and he wouldn't. I knew he was going to like stay the night. I would come home the next day after this very long, terrible day. Yeah. And then I could at least control that like the floor would be clean when I got there, and the laundry would be put away when I got there. Felt like one thing I could do, in a whole sea of things I couldn't. And so that led me to think that maybe a good topic for us to talk about today is control. Yeah. And as caregivers, all the things that are out of our control and then the impact that has on us. So when you sort of hear that, like, what does that bring up in you? What is that? Does that something you resonate with about like, not having control as a caregiver?
Yeah, certainly it does. I think that there's this initially when you become a caregiver, when your person gets sick, there's this kind of often this, I don't know, like world crashing down around you moment, and because I think there's this illusion that we have when everything was going well in our lives, seemingly, that we have so much more control over our lives than we actually do. That the choices we make good choices, and we're gonna not get sick or whatever it is, that we can have a lot of control over the outcome and the direction of our lives. Yeah. And then something out of the blue comes and it's like realization that you don't have a lot of control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is a difficult thing to process and I guess grieve or come to terms with. And it's just this really like wake up moment, I think, that as caregivers and the person we're caring for certainly too, have to like deal with.
Yeah.
And then figure out how to move forward.
Yeah.
As you said, with so many things out of our control.
Right. So I'm having a little light bulb moment here.
Yeah.
Is that, how we talk so often about supporters and how supporters try to bright side us, right? Yeah. And it's because it makes them uncomfortable. This is why, right? Yeah. They're still living in that illusion of like, if I just do X, Y, Z, I'll be fine. But then they see us and they're like, oh crap, they were doing X, Y, Z, and the rug got pulled out from under them, and it freaks them out. Yeah. And then that freaking of them out is like, that makes me feel uncomfortable. And they try to clean that up by being like, well, at least you da-da-da. Or it's why sometimes people, I know Kate Bowler always talks about this because she had colon, I think, cancer. And then people are always like, well, did you eat this and this and this?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, was it genetic? Like people are trying to find that reason.
Yeah.
So it can make more
safer.
Sense.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they're trying to, it's their own sense of control. This could be a whole 6-part episode. It's their own sense of control is that they're trying to like control the narrative of like, oh, well, it's not going to happen to me. It happened to Kate because maybe her uncle had it or she ate too much red meat or whatever. Right. And so they're trying to control it as well. So anyway, that just like, for me real quick. But back to us as the people it's happening to. Yeah. It also makes me think my grandmother got breast cancer when she was like 97 or something.
Oh, wow.
And she was so mad because she was like, I ate all that broccoli. She was very pious about like, I did not eat those potato chips. I ate all my green things. And the doctor was like, if you live to 97, you're going to get some cancer. Like it's just going to happen. Right. Yeah. But she was like, I controlled all the variables and this thing still happened to me. Yeah. Really? Right. And so I think that it's so true that I love how you said we have this illusion that if we just this, everything will be fine. And then lives like ours happen where there's no reason. Like there's no we didn't do anything to cause these diseases. Yeah. They just happen to us, which makes us realize like, oh man, really, we don't know. We can't control these things. Big picture. So it's a little existential as well. Sure. Right. Do you remember that for yourself? Like having that moment of like, oh man, I thought this was our path and now it is. And like the combination of that with like, with this term of control, with this, you know what I mean? Like, and how did it feel like the rug had been pulled out and like you would now have control over nothing? Or do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't an acute moment for us. So there wasn't that like real,
right,
the day before and the day after kind of situation that, you know, a lot of people have. I think that a moment where that became very real is when, I mean, Sarah was getting sick and we had to make the decision to no longer pursue our adoption.
Yeah.
And that was very much we thought this was a path we were on. Yeah. We were doing what we could there. And then Sarah starts getting sick and we realize that's not a direction that we have the capacity for.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's going to happen with Sarah's health. Yeah, that was very much a things are out of our hands moment. And that was a really hard thing to go through. Yeah. I think that was, if there was a moment of feeling that, I think that was it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because before then, and I mean, you know, I know firsthand the adoption process is hard and messy and all of those things. Right. But at least you sort of hope that like, okay, we have the control of, we fill out the forms, we check the boxes, we do this, and then this thing gets to happen. Right.
Right.
And so in your situation to be like, nope, like that whole thing just was taken off the table. Like even the option to pursue that was taken away from you. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was this point for a while, you know, what is life going to look like? Because she's getting sicker. Are we going to find out what it is? She's going to get treatment or whatever corrective care and like, okay, we'll be back on track.
Right.
And there was a long period and I don't know where along the way, it's like, okay, no, our life is going to be different. We're not going back to quote unquote normal or our previous path. We are on a new trajectory.
Yeah.
And realizing that in that, you know, we're trying to see all the doctors, we're trying to get all the answers and doing all the things and still for a long time not getting answers and not getting a clear do this and she will improve.
Right.
And it feels helpless because it feels like you're trying all the things and you just can't get any traction.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you have no control over the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like helpless maybe is like the antithesis of control.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I think you described so well what so many of us have gone through of this, like searching for a diagnosis, searching for, for some people, a cure, searching for a treatment and feeling like I can't control that this happened, but now I want to try to control like the symptoms or the trajectory or the future. And, you know, we can't. Like I keep trying to picture something really slippery, like trying to grab a hold of something that's really slippery and it just keeps slipping through our hands, right? And we'll just keep grasping for it. And we can't. And we want to hold on to it, but we can't.
Yeah.
Because it's like not attainable, right? It's not something that can be held.
Yeah.
Right. And so like what it feels like, or like what does that feel like to be the caregiver? And because even, you know, we talk so much about claiming that title, and I think there's so much power in claiming that title. And like with great power comes responsibility, or whatever that phrase is, right? And so if we have this title, we're the caregiver, that can also be a lot of pressure of like, well, if I'm the caregiver, I have to manage these things. Like if I'm her caregiver, I should be making sure that she's not in pain. I should be finding a cure. I should be finding the doctor. I should be. And these are things that are like beyond our control. And yet as caregivers, we might feel like they need to be in our control because it's our job and it's our role. Right. As caregiver, as spouse, as parent, as child, as whatever. Right.
I think another way that it feels like we are out of control is, this is maybe more in the day to day than this kind of like big picture that we been talking about, is in a lot of cases, our person's illness or condition is what's in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And, I know from my experience with Sarah, there were often times like I didn't know day to day how she was going to be doing. We could have something on the calendar that we were going to do something on Friday, and we get there and she's just feeling terrible and it's out of the cards. Yep. It's off the table. And even like as caregivers, when we're caring for someone, we are responding to them, responding to their condition, responding to their symptoms. Mm-hmm. It can feel, I think, that we don't have a lot of agency over our own life, that our existence is to respond and to do what we can for our person. And it just feels like sometimes we're along for the ride, and I think that that's really hard. And I think that that's where sometimes people can lose themselves in this.
That was a really powerful paragraph you just said, my friend. I'm already excited to listen back to that. Like, I'm so glad we're recording this so I can hear that again. Yes. That we're just sort of in. I keep picturing one of those little like motorcycles with a little sidecar thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like, but is the disease the one driving?
Yeah, right.
Right. And we're just like sort of forgotten. And you're exactly right that with like our own lives, like a friend the other day said, I'm trying to make this plan for this party. Like, what are the odds that you think you might be coming? And she said, no pressure. And I said, that we are like a week, maybe at best.
Right.
For anything. Right. And so you're right that even like for me, whether it's something that Sean's going to come along with or not, for me, and people that somebody the other day, can you come to this conference in January? And this was before we had the results. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. A friend came over yesterday to see both of us. She arrived. Sean's like, I don't feel well. I have to lie down. I mean, she was fine with it. Right. But I just think that the uncertainty that we live with, we can't even control like a coffee date with a friend.
Yeah.
And if that's going to happen or not, like that's a lot. That's, and so then I think there comes that comparison with our peers, right? Those people can make plans. Cool. Right. What's that like? People can know that like the plan will actually happen. Strange, What are other, when we think about that, because I was thinking earlier about like, what are some things that we cannot control?
Right.
They're out of our control. So future is a big one and planning.
Yep.
Are a couple that I put. Other things I put are like, well, sort of like the ultimate health of our person. Like we can't. We can't control their health. We can't control their pain. Right. Or their suffering. Which we want to, but we cannot. It makes me think back to our one about witnessing our person suffering and what that can feel like. I also thought like we can't, there's so much around systems that we can't control, right? Yeah. We are going up against a lot of broken systems.
Yeah.
Systems that are like making decisions about our person's life and well-being. And we can fight against it, but against that, again, that's like this other task for us to take on and we're really tired, right? Yeah. So that's another thing I thought of that we can't control is like how broken the systems are.
Right. Yeah. Like there's big policy things that need to happen for caregivers to be better supported. And like, there's maybe action we can do as like calling our representatives or things like that, but still like we can't make the change ourselves.
Right.
And it feels like it's just, those things are just too big. And I think that sometimes it just feels like it's not worth the effort because it feels too big.
Right.
And honestly, that's a valid reaction with us being so overwhelmed and in it. Like, I don't fault anybody for coming to that end in that.
Right.
Because it's a lot that we're dealing with.
Right. I mean, that's why I'm so grateful, side note, for organizations like Caring Across Generation, because they're out there advocating, so that we tired folks don't always have to be the only ones doing it. But it makes me also think about like researching and fundraising, right? We've talked about this before. Like, should we be out there researching for a cure? Should we be about the fundraising so that the researchers can do their work? And again, it's like making us beat down, tired people do this extra thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, that's one way. And some people like cling on to that. They're like, I will have this 5K every year to raise the funds because it's something I can control.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Great. Love it. Yeah. And so that's another thing I think is like, how does this lack of control impact us?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like it led me to clean my house that night.
Right.
Because I was like, I'm going to cling to something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What do you feel like, what have you experienced or seen about like the lack of control and how that has impacted you and what that has led you to do or not do or feel?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think that one thing that when I think about when Sarah was really sick and me feeling like I didn't have control, being able to leave the house and go to work for the day when I was able to, work in the office, like that was a sphere that I had control over. And it was not that it was always this like delightful thing to be at work, and like not that there wasn't stress there and all kinds of stuff there, but it felt like a different sphere, a sphere where I had control, a sphere where I could have an impact or have some sway in the direction that things went. And that was just it was good to be able to experience that when outside of that, everything felt so out of control.
Yeah. So well said. Yeah, totally. Because as much as like sometimes it's really hard to be a working caregiver, you're right. That's a different space. And even as you were talking, it made me think like, this is probably why I love to-do lists, because I can just be like, look at me. I crossed something off, something I can do. I can write it down. I can do it. I can cross it off. You know, I find that for me, it ends up being about my house and my environment.
Okay. Yeah.
Partly because it is something I can control, right? This is dirty. I can clean it. I think the other thing is I'm always trying to sort of set up the ideal environment, preparing for the next emergency. Right? Like if I organize all of the medical supplies, then the next time I need to like frantically find the blood pressure cuff,
you know where it's at.
I'm going to know where it is. The next time the other thing happens, I'm going to know, like, I'm going to be able to easily, like, that's something I can control, is that in the midst of whatever emergency happens, I'm going to be able to cleanly and clearly access what I need, because those barriers are down when I can't control the other barriers. Right.
You can't control what's going to happen in the future, but you can control your preparation in anticipation of it. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's I think that you could go into, like, I think it's natural to look around and find something you can control and really try to focus on that. And like, it could be work for you. It could be your house as it is for you.
Yep.
And I think that's good. But I think that if it can be something that also is beneficial to this path that you're on, like controlling preparation, controlling, maybe I got this medicine and medication organized and all set up, and like I'm on top of refills, and like that's a thing you can maybe control.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe could be helpful. But at the same time, it's like you wish you could be controlling something that wasn't, I don't know, it's still making the disease is still kind of in the driver's seat there, because what you're doing is in reaction to that. And so I don't know if there's as much as our lives are so full because of this, I wonder if this is like we've talked about, we haven't talked about it in a while, but like these micro moments where we can have some time to ourselves, even if it's a minute or 5 minutes.
Right.
Like if we can look at it in kind of that context and, okay, for this brief minute, I'm going to take control by stepping away and giving myself some space and letting me focus on me. Or I have 30 minutes. I have this hobby that I love to do. And that's an area where I can exercise control. And I'm exercising control over the situation by letting myself take the time to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's a way that we can use that feeling that we need to control something to a good benefit.
For sure. It's sort of like if we think about, we got to self-care, right?
Yeah.
Like, but if we use it through the angle of like, I need to control something. If I say like, I'm going to get cozy and go to bed early tonight so that I'm well rested,
Right.
So that in case tomorrow there's an emergency, I have gotten a lot of good sleep. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like sometimes we almost have to trick our brains. I hate that that's how we have to think. Like, I think that way sometimes. Like, I need to rest up because who knows what tomorrow's going to be.
Right.
But in some ways, okay, I guess if it tricks us into doing those things that are good for ourselves, you know. I was talking to this caregiver the other day, and he was, before he even knew that we were going to talk about this, he was talking about control.
Yeah.
And he said it's almost like he used to have like 100 acorns in his hand of things that he could control.
Okay.
And now most of those are gone, which he said is making him cling even more tightly.
Yeah.
To the 3 acorns that are left.
Right.
Right. Because there's only 3 left, so they fit better in his hand, and he can just like hold on to them. You know what I mean? I was like, ooh, that's good. That's good. And so I think that in some ways we want to look at like, is this a healthy thing? Is this not a healthy thing? Like sometimes when I'm like frantically cleaning or organizing, I think, am I doing this because I want to be doing this activity, or because I just want to clean house because that feels like at least something in my life is in control. And I think usually it's like, I just want to clean house. Like if someone could snap their fingers and suddenly everything was organized and clean, I'd be like, great, I'm going to go take a nap. Yeah. You know? So I think, we can talk about supporters later, right? And that's a way that maybe they could help. But so I just think some of it is like, even paying attention to like, why do I suddenly feel like, oh my goodness, I need to clean everything? It's like, oh, it's because I'm trying to control something. Yeah. Oh, because I'm kind of trying to prepare for the emergency that might not even happen. You know, I sometimes even find myself, and she doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can say this, but like when things are really out of control with Sean, then suddenly I find myself thinking about things with Maya and being like, what are all the things about parenting that I haven't done well? Right. What are all the things that like I should be pushing her to do more of this or better of that, blah, blah, blah. And I have to stop myself and be like, okay, wait a minute, Brininger, like what's actually happening? And it's almost always that I'm feeling out of control about a different part of my life. Right. And then my brain goes to this one that I think I can control, which I really can't. But you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think maybe even just the awareness for all of us of like, hold on, take a little step back here. What's going on? Why am I suddenly fixated on this or to do, really wanting to do this, Yeah.
I think another way that we can respond to this feeling like everything is out of our control, and I think this maybe falls with certain personality types where some latch on to, okay, what can I control? And like, I'm going to control the things I can control. Yep. And I think for others, it might be just this overwhelm. Everything is out of my control. And this kind of like, I don't know if apathy is the right word, but what I think about is like you're in a stream and you're fighting against the current, trying to like have some control. And instead you just kind of like let the current take you. Sure. And you let the disease take you all in the direction you're going in. And not that you're not doing things to help your person, but it just feels like there's nothing I have control over and just kind of giving into that. Or you're not a person who controlling your surroundings isn't like a natural thing for you. And I think that's other people maybe respond more in that direction.
And I can't figure out, are you trying to say that sort of a healthy sort of like, let it go, just let it be kind of way, or more of like that's the other end of the pendulum of like too far of apathy? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think like it could be
being
both.
swept away by the current.
Right. Yeah, right. There's two different ways of that: the current sweeping you away, or just kind of like in a healthy way going with the flow. Right. And I think I don't know that I had thought out in my mind which necessarily one of those it was. Just that's a thing. But I think both of those could be true. Yeah. And I think that probably if it is just you're getting swept away, that's not ideal.
You think?
But but also I don't know what to say to someone like that necessarily to get them to help them find some footing.
Right. And I think, footing feels very apt in that analogy. And I think you're right, because I think for some people you might want to, it's got to feel really awful to be like, I've got control over nothing. Yeah. Nothing. And so I'm just going to let it. I give up. Right.
Right.
And so for those folks,
super helpless feeling.
Yes. Yeah. For those folks, it might be like, okay, what is one thing you have control over?
Yeah.
Whereas
to
other people,
look
it
for
might be
those
like,
things. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, it might be like, what's one thing you can let control of go? You know what I mean? If
Yeah,
you're trying to
right.
cling too tightly to your
Uh-huh.
acorns, you know?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know this is a little bit cheesy, but this is all making me think of the serenity prayer,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? So that's God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change,
Mm-hmm.
courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there might be something there for some of our
Right.
listeners in like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like part of this is acceptance. I have very little control over
Mm-hmm.
the disease progression,
Yeah.
you know, but the things I can control. So what have I lost control of?
Mm-hmm.
What do I have control over? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I can control that we go to the surveillance appointments. I can
Mm-hmm.
control the regimen. I can, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the things that I'm, how can I see the difference? And how can I just, see those two buckets of like, here's what I've lost control
Right.
of. Here's what I can control. There we go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think kind of tangential to that is there something you are clinging to control of that by clinging to control of that, you're burning yourself out?
Right.
Or exerting energy that you don't need to be exerting in that area? Like I'm not saying this is you, but you could be, if you're so fixated on controlling your environment and your house, like
Mm-hmm.
you're spending so much time on that more than
Mm-hmm.
maybe you need to,
Mm-hmm.
but it is what you can control.
Mm-hmm.
And it's using all your energy
Right.
when maybe you need to be using some of that time to sit and do nothing.
Right.
And just rest.
Yeah.
And that's where like it's tough to know
Yeah.
where you should be putting your energy, I guess. I don't know. It's tough. It's hard.
It is hard. I was thinking this about germs for me.
Oh, okay.
Right. So like my concern about germs and right now, like a bunch of my extended family members just had COVID and a bunch of my other extended family members had RSV, and everyone's really great about like, okay, we're not going to come around you because of this. Standing in the CVS line yesterday, the person in front of me and the person behind me are just like coughing their lungs out. And I just was like panicking a little bit, and of course I had a mask on because I'm in CVS and everybody always coughs there. Right.
Yeah.
Nobody else did. But I think that that's something, right, that I feel like, and I sometimes have to remind myself, okay, look, like Sean doesn't often, even though on paper his immune system is not as strong as it should be, like he doesn't often get these little things. And it's not like the sniffles. I think it's just like our life is complicated anyway. And well, you know what we don't need? The head cold going through the house, right? It just feels like that would like hit us harder in some ways. Not even necessarily like sending him to the hospital harder, but just like our life is already hard. So at least can we not be sneezing?
Yeah.
And so I find myself trying to control that piece, like the germs. And then sometimes I'm like, am I missing out on like seeing all the small children in my life because they're always sick? Am I missing out on whatever because I'm trying to control this germ thing? But in doing it, I'm trying to just be like, look, our life is already hard and I don't want to add the basic stomach flu to it. Yeah. Because I just don't. So again, I don't know where the line is there, but I think that's another area I try to cling to control.
Yeah. When you mentioned germs, it made me think of something that's an example that maybe some of the supporters listening can relate to. And it was at the start of the pandemic in 2020. There's this disease going around that is killing a lot of people. They don't know. It was before we knew how it was transmitted. We didn't know a lot about it. And so that was a scary time.
Yeah.
And I remember, what steps do you take to like prevent that before you even know what's going on? So like, we're getting our groceries delivered.
Right.
And then it's like, do we need to be wiping down our groceries? And like, that's something I can do. I don't know if that's going to help, but I can take the step and all of those little things to try to find that footing, find something where you can, okay, at least I can do this and I'm doing something amidst that like huge unknown that came out of seemingly nowhere.
Right. I really am loving this find your footing thing because I think, something I said at the beginning is like, it's like the rug was pulled out from under us, right?
Right. Yeah.
We thought you said we had this illusion of control. It's like they go, off goes the rug, we fall down, right? And we keep trying to clamber back up to be like, is there something we can control? And like you said, like I'm picturing myself like literally on my front steps, like Cloroxing down my groceries. And I remember doing a video and then someone calling me out and being like, you should really have your hair back because your hair the wind made your hair go into your mouth at one point, and then your hair could have it. And I was like, oh, for goodness sake. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But we were all just trying.
Right.
To figure out how to control this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so much. Another thing in this, I think it could be like each of these could be like a 12-part series. Right. But I think I thought about is like controlling like the narrative and controlling like other people's perception or other people's like, at the very beginning we talked about that this makes other people feel uncomfortable, therefore they're going to say dumb things and whatever. And like we can't control that.
Yeah.
We can't control maybe their ignorance or their opinions or whatever. And yet that can feel really hard. Right.
Yeah. There's the feeling that we need to be educating.
Right.
We need to, like when you said control the narrative, what came to mind is like the times when Sarah would have a good day or a run of good days. And it's like someone sees her out and about and it's like, yes, she's doing well right now, but she is not better.
Right.
And needing to like you said, control the narrative by stating that or feeling like you have to be continually like steering people's perceptions back to reality.
Right.
And that's exhausting.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I wrote the post about like the surgeon said this is curative, I wanted to write a whole paragraph about like, but it doesn't really mean like, curative.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was like, Brininger, just leave it. Apparently I talk to myself a lot
That's okay.
by using my last name. But I found myself wanting to do that because I thought, what if by saying this, that means they're all going to be like, Sean is scared, right?
Right.
And that's not the case. So that feels, there's that piece too.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that came up recently was that, and I think this is a whole thing that you and I, correct me if I'm wrong, have not experienced, but what I'm hearing a lot from caregivers who are parents of kids with special needs, that is a whole different world in the way they are treated by the medical system. And that a lot of them have been educating me about how if they show up in an appointment and it seems like the kid's not doing well or the parent's not doing well, that there is this fear that the kids will be taken away.
Oh, wow.
And so some caregivers were sharing that sometimes when they prepare for an appointment, they do things like they get dressed up, like they dress in a more professional way, the parent does, and try to present themselves, like try to control that part by controlling their outfit.
Yeah.
Because they want to show like, I'm here, I'm doing a good job as a parent, because there is always this fear that if they feel like they're deemed unworthy or not taking good care of their kids, that like Child Protective Services is going to come. So again, we've got to dig into this and talk more about this. But what they were sharing is that that's one thing they control is the outfit that they wear.
Wow.
The flip side of that is a different caregiver said, well, I don't like to get super dressed up because if I look too good, the medical team is going to think that I have a too pulled together and they're not going to support me.
Wow.
So that person said, I try to dress down on medical days because I want them to see that like I am suffering over here.
Right.
I need some help.
Yeah.
Right. So again, these are bigger topics we need to spin off later, but those are just more examples of like the things that we were trying to control in this situation.
Yeah.
I'm trying to control the perception of the medical provider of me by what I wear that day.
And what you're really responding to is the brokenness of the system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
I know. So parents of kids with special needs, we are like, I am dedicated to learning more about that and to speaking up more about that because it's a lot, period. Right.
Yeah.
But to learn this extra layer is just, so anyway, we will dig more into that another day. So many things. So let's start to think about our supporters, shall we? So how do you feel like people in our lives can be helping us with this?
One thing that popped into my mind as we were talking, and I was like, I'm going to bring that up when we get to supporters, is you were talking about like fundraising and like research and that piece of it. And as a supporter, you can, whether it's participating in a fundraiser, like if you're the person you're supporting, if their person has a disease that has a like walk or a like Relay for Life or like all of these kinds of things that support these different, essentially research funds is what they're doing. like participate in that and raise funds and do that, because the caregiver, like, that's something that if they can feel like other people are doing that so that they don't have to, like, that's great.
It is.
And then, I think
before you go on, can I stop you and add on
for
to that?
sure?
Because I think especially this time of year, like, that's a great gift. Like, some people have done that. Like, they've done a donation to the Fanconi Anemia Research Fund. And almost all the time with organizations like that, you can say, like, in honor of someone.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, that kind of thing, we've had people do like birthday fundraisers, like Facebook, makes that really easy that you can say, for my birthday, I'm raising funds for, and then click the nonprofit. And so we've had people do that. And so people have done that with a negative space as well. And then you can say, like, in honor of this person or in memory of this person. And so, again, I think that has the double bonus of just the recognition. Like, when people do that, we're always like, wow, they know the name of the disease. Like, they looked it up. They found the organization. They're spending time on this. They're shining light on this. And then, so there's that piece, but then also, like you said, like, the piece of, like, so now maybe I don't have to feel as guilty that I didn't send a Christmas letter asking people for money for the Fanconi Anemia Research Fund. Right.
That reminded me of something else, something we didn't talk about is, I think that with illness, with caregiving, like, the financial piece of the medical system can feel like way out of your hands.
Absolutely.
Because it's a thing, like, you can't control what this procedure is going to cost.
Right.
And so, like, certainly there are cases where people have just insurmountable medical debt. And, like, so as a supporter, if you see that situation coming or want to preempt that situation for someone, like, don't make them put the GoFundMe together. And it's terrible that in our system,
I know,
like, we have to resort to GoFundMes and things like that for people to financially get through illness, or not necessarily. I don't know. That it's just terrible.
It is.
But if you can take the lead on that, that would mean so much to the people you're supporting, and to know that you're out there promoting that, you're out there handling that. I imagine that would mean the world.
For sure. Absolutely. Or even just a quiet, like, here's a check for $100. I'm sure you have a lot of bills coming in.
Yeah.
Or spend this however you'd like. But, just a little, like, boop kind of thing. If you feel like you don't have it in you to, do a whole GoFundMe, but, like, just something, that recognition, right, of that is huge. Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about, when I was thinking about supporters, about sort of giving us grace, so that, like, if someone had been in my house that night before surgery and they might have been like, why are you vacuuming? I don't understand. You should be sitting down. What is happening right now? To give us the grace that, like, if you see us trying to control the things we can control, understand that that's what we're doing. If you see us being weird, I should say me. These are my quirks. Being weird about germs. Right. Or whatever, like, understand that there's so much out of our control. And these are our 3 little acorns we have left. And we are holding on for dear life to these acorns. So both give us grace and not, like, be like, you're so weird about germs, or why are you, this is not how you should be spending your time. But then the other thing is, like, to say, like, I see that you're vacuuming this night before surgery. And I'm wondering, can I step in? Why don't you go rest? And I will, because for me, and some people might be like, no, because I have to control how well it's vacuumed. Like, that's not me. I just want it to be done. Right.
Yeah.
So even to step in and say, I can imagine that, like, it's hard to I would love to come and, clean your house so that it's ready, that you can come home from surgery to a clean house or whatever. Right. So to step in and help in that way, and, or to see us and give us grace if you see us clinging to these things of control.
I think another thing that comes to mind is, as a supporter, you see the caregiver, you see the person who is sick going through, maybe they're going into surgery, right? And it's going to be a surgery day in recovery, and you feel helpless, like you don't know what to do, or like it feels like you can't do anything. I don't know. That's not the right way to put that, but you feel like what is going to happen is out of your control, right? And using that, what can you control in that situation as a supporter? You can send a message to the caregiver, like, hey, I'm thinking about you while this is going on. You can, Venmo them some money for coffee. You can make some meals for their freezer for when they get home, or have a meal fresh for them when they get home. You can say, hey, can I rake your leaves? Like, those are things that you have control over as a supporter.
Yep.
You have control over how supported the caregiver feels. You can't impact what direction the illness is going to go, or you can't directly impact what their energy level is going to be or any of that. But like, you can do tangible things for them. And that is going to make a huge difference for the caregiver. And that's kind of where you can find your footing. As a supporter.
Sure. Because I think it's important for, like, let's say you as my friend, right? We're feeling helpless a week ago and Sean had surgery.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, even for you to pay attention to the way you feel, how helpless you feel, and then to help that inform how we might be feeling. Right. And to use that energy to better understand on some level what it's like. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like a tiny bit off topic, but I just want to put it out there so that we can maybe come back to another time. But I keep thinking about your sort of car analogy, because our last episode where I talked to that therapist, she was talking about cancer, but also said that, like, she works with couples to say, like, it's not just like the person's disease. It's like, oh, the two of us are dealing with this disease. Like, it's like a 3 per part thing.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about today, and what I keep picturing, is sort of like, the disease is driving, our loved one's in the passenger seat, and we're like in the trunk. Being dragged. Maybe we're being dragged along by the bumper. So anyway, I just wanted to say that out loud so that we can keep thinking about that and what that out, because I think it's an interesting, I think too often it's just like, this is a thing happening to the person and we're not even thought of. Yeah. Right. But what does it look like to have it be more of like a triangle, or I don't know. So I just wanted to put that out there so we could think about that another day.
Think about that.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any takeaways? Anything that you're going to think about or do differently today based on this?
I think just a more intentional awareness, or just have more intention around where can I find footing? What things? Because I think I lean more towards I don't have any control over this situation. Like, there's nothing I can do, and feeling that helplessness and just
getting swooshed down the river.
I can get swept away in that. Yeah. So finding those things that, okay, here's where I can find some solid ground. Here's where I can feel like I have some agency over my life, over the direction of this, at least small sphere. Yeah. I think that's maybe something I'll be thinking about.
And then it's funny because obviously I'm on the opposite end.
Right.
So maybe I should be thinking a little bit about, like, how to, like, lift up a little toe. Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe my feet are a little, like, clutching to the ground.
Right. Or like unclench the acorn a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so to think about, like, okay, what am I, like, suddenly doing this thing because I'm just trying to hold on to control? Yeah. And can I let any of that go? You know? Yeah. Oof. Good stuff.
Yeah. I think that's good.
Yeah. Okay. Great to talk to you. Listeners will have a support group that I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about on this one. And so stay tuned for that. And I love how each one of these episodes turns into, like, ooh, we should also talk about this. Ooh, right. We will never be out of ideas.
No, we won't.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Great to talk to you. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to In Sickness. Find us online at insickness.care or on Instagram at insicknesspodcast. You can send your questions and comments to insicknesspodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or fellow caregiver, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening, and take care.